Chapter 5 of Man, King of Mind, Body, and Circumstance. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Man, King of Mind, Body, and Circumstance by James Allen. Chapter 5. Poverty. Many of the greatest men through all ages have abandoned riches and adopted poverty to better enable them to accomplish their lofty purposes. Why, then, is poverty regarded as such a terrible evil? Why is it that this poverty, which these great men regard as a blessing and adopt as a bride, should be looked upon by the bulk of mankind as a scourge and a plague? The answer is plain. In one case, the poverty is associated with a nobility of mind which not only takes from it all appearances of evil, but which lifts it up and makes it appear good and beautiful, makes it seem more attractive and more to be desired than riches and honor, so much so that, seeing the dignity and happiness of the noble mendicant, thousands imitate him by adopting his mode of life. In the other case, the poverty of our great cities is associated with everything that is mean and repulsive, with swearing, drunkenness, filth, laziness, dishonesty, and crime. What then is the primary evil? Is it poverty, or is it sin? The answer is inevitable. It is sin. Remove sin from poverty and its sting is gone. It has ceased to be the gigantic evil that it appeared, and can even be turned to good and noble ends. Confucius held up one of his poor disciples as an example of lofty virtue to his richer pupils. Yet although he was so poor that he had to live on rice and water, and had no better shelter than a hovel, he uttered no complaint. Where this poverty would have made other men discontented and miserable, he did not allow his equanimity to be disturbed. Poverty cannot undermine a noble character, but it can set it off to a better advantage. The virtues of this man shone all the brighter for being set in poverty, like resplendent jewels set in a contrasting background. It is common with social reformers to regard poverty as the cause of the sins with which it is associated, yet the same reformers refer to immoralities of the rich as being caused by their riches. Where there is a cause its effect will appear, and where affluence the cause of immorality, and poverty the cause of degradation, then every rich man would become immortal, and every poor man would come to degradation. An evil-doer will commit evil under any circumstances, whether he be rich or poor, or midway between the two conditions. A right-doer will do right howsoever he be placed. Extreme circumstances may help to bring out the evil which is already there awaiting its opportunity, but they cannot cause the evil, cannot create it. Discontent with one's financial condition is not the same as poverty. Many people regard themselves as poor whose income runs into several hundreds, and in some cases several thousands, of pounds a year, combined with light responsibilities. They imagine their affliction to be poverty. Their real trouble is covetousness. They are not made unhappy by poverty, but by a thirst for riches. Poverty is more often in the mind than in the purse. So long as a man thirsts for more money he will regard himself as poor, and in that sense he is poor, for covetousness is poverty of mind. A miser may be a millionaire, but he is as poor as when he was penniless. On the other hand, the trouble with so many who are living in indigence and degradation is that they are satisfied with their condition. To be living in dirt, disorder, laziness, and swinish self-indulgence, reveling in foul thoughts, foul words, and unclean surroundings, and to be satisfied with oneself, is deplorable. Here again, poverty resolves itself into a mental condition, and its solution, as a problem, is to be looked for in the improvement of the individual from within, rather than of his outward condition. Let a man be made clean and alert from within, and he will no longer be content with dirt and degradation without. Having put his mind in order, he will then put his house in order. Indeed, both he and others will know that he has put himself right by the fact that he has put his immediate surroundings right. His altered heart shows in his altered life. There are, of course, those who are neither self-deceived nor self-degraded, and yet are poor. Many such are satisfied to remain poor. They are contented, industrious, and happy, and desire nothing else. But those among them who are dissatisfied, and are ambitious for better surroundings and greater scope, should, and usually do, use their poverty as a spur to the exercise of their talents and energies. By self-improvement and attention to duty they can rise into the fuller, more responsible life which they desire. Devotion to duty is, indeed, not only the way out of poverty which is regarded as restrictive, it is also the royal road to affluence, influence, and lasting joy, even to perfection itself. When understood in its deepest sense, it is seen to be related to all that is best and noblest in life. It includes energy, industry, concentrated attention to the business of one's life, singleness of purpose, courage and faithfulness, determination and self-reliance, and that self-abnegation which is the key to all real greatness. A singularly successful man was once asked, "What is the secret to your success?" And he replied, "Getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and minding my own business." Success, honor, and influence always come to him who diligently attends to the business of his life, and religiously avoids interfering with the duties of others. It may here be urged, and is usually so urged, that the majority of those who are in poverty, for instance, the mill and factory workers, have not the time or opportunity to give themselves to any special work. This is a mistake. Time and opportunity are always at hand, are with everybody at all times. Those of the poor above mentioned, those who are content to remain where they are, can always be diligent in their factory labor, and sober and happy in their homes. But those of them who feel that they could better fill another sphere can prepare for it by educating themselves in their spare time. The hard-worked poor are, above all, the people who need to economize their time and energies, and the youth who wishes to rise out of such poverty must at the outset put aside the foolish and wasteful indulgences of alcohol, tobacco, sexual vice, late hours at music halls, clubs, and gaming parties, and must give his evenings to the improvement of his mind in that course of education which is necessary to his advancement. By this method, numbers of the most influential men throughout history, some of them among the greatest, have raised themselves from the commonest poverty, a fact which proves that the time of necessity is the hour of opportunity, and not, as is so often imagined and declared, the destruction of opportunity; that the deeper the poverty, the greater is the incentive to action in those who are dissatisfied with themselves, and are bent upon achievement. Poverty is an evil, or it is not, according to the character and the condition of mind of the one that is in poverty. Wealth is an evil, or it is not, in the same manner. Tolstoy chafed under his wealthy circumstances. To him they were a great evil. He longed for poverty as the covetous long for wealth. Vice, however, is always an evil, for it both degrades the individual who commits it and is a menace to society. A logical and profound study of poverty will always bring us back to the individual and to the human heart. When our social reformers condemn vice as they now condemn the rich, when they are eager to abolish wrong living as they are now to abolish low wages, we may look for the diminution in that form of degraded poverty which is one of the dark spots on our civilization. Before such poverty disappears altogether, the human heart will have undergone, during the process of evolution, a radical change. When that heart is purged from covetousness and selfishness, when drunkenness, impurity, indolence, and self-indulgence are driven forever from the earth, then poverty and riches will be known no more, and every man will perform his duties with a joy so full and deep as is yet, except to the few whose hearts are already pure, unknown to men, and all will eat of the fruit of their labor in sublime self-respect and perfect peace. Chapter 5. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 6 of Man, King of Mind, Body, and Circumstance. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Man, King of Mind, Body, and Circumstance by James Allen. Chapter 6. Man's Spiritual Dominion. The kingdom over which man is destined to rule with undisputed sway is that of his own mind and life. But this kingdom, as already shown, is not separate from the universe, is not confined to itself alone. It is intimately related to entire humanity, to nature, to the current of events in which it is, for the time being, involved, and to the vast universe. Thus the mastery of this kingdom embraces the mastery of the knowledge of life. It lifts a man into the supremacy of wisdom, bestowing upon him the gift of insight into human hearts, giving him the power to distinguish between good and evil, also to comprehend that which is above both good and evil, and to know the nature and consequences of deeds. At present men are more or less under the sway of rebellious thoughts, and the conquest of these is the supreme conquest of life. The unwise think that everything can be mastered by oneself, and they seek for happiness for themselves and others by modifying external things. The transposing of outward effects cannot bring permanent happiness or bestow wisdom. The patching and coddling of a sin-laden body cannot produce health and well-being. The wise know that there is no real mastery until self is subdued, and that when one's self is conquered, the subjugation of externals is finally assured, and they find happiness forever springing up within them in the calm strength of divine virtue. They put away sin, and purify and strengthen the body by rising superior to the sway of its passions. Man can reign over his own mind, can be lord over himself. Until he does so reign, his life is unsatisfactory and imperfect. His spiritual dominion is the empire of the mental forces of which his nature is composed. The body has no causative power. The ruling of the body, that is, of appetite and passion, is the discipline of mental forces. The subduing, modifying, redirecting, and transmuting of the antagonizing spiritual elements within is the wonderful and mighty work which all men must, sooner or later, undertake. For a long time man regards himself as the slave of external forces, but there comes a day when his spiritual eyes open, and he sees that he has been a slave this long time to none and nothing but his own ungoverned, unpurified self. In that day he rises up, and as ascending his spiritual throne, he no longer obeys his desires, appetites, and passions as their slave, but henceforth rules them as his subjects. The mental kingdom through which he has been wont to wander as a puling beggar and a whipped serf, he now discovers is his by right of lordly self-control, his to set in order, to organize and harmonize, to abolish its dissensions and painful contradictions, and bring it to a state of peace. Thus rising up and exercising his rightful spiritual authority, he enters the company of those kingly ones who in all ages have conquered and attained, who have overcome ignorance, darkness, and mental suffering, and have ascended into truth. Chapter 6. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Chapter 7 of Man, King of Mind, Body, and Circumstance. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Man, King of Mind, Body, and Circumstance by James Allen. Chapter 7. Conquest, not Resignation. He who has undertaken the sublime task of overcoming himself does not resign himself to anything that is evil. He subjects himself only to that which is good. Resignation to evil is the lowest weakness. Obedience to good is the highest power. To resign one's self to sin and sorrow, to ignorance and suffering, is to say in effect, I give up, I am defeated, life is evil, and I submit. Such resignation to evil is the reverse of religion. It is the direct denial of good. It elevates evil to the position of supreme power in the universe. Such submission to evil shows itself in a selfish and sorrowful life, a life devoid of strength against temptation, and that of joy and calm which are the manifestation of a mind that is dominated by good. Man is not framed for perpetual resignation and sorrow, but for final victory and joy. All the spiritual laws of the universe are with the good man, for good preserves and shields. There are no laws of evil. Its nature is destruction and desolation. The consciousness modification of the character away from evil and towards good forms, at present, no part in the common course of education. Even our religious teachers have lost this knowledge and practice, and cannot, therefore, instruct concerning it. Moral growth is, so far, in the great mass of mankind, unconscious, and is brought about by the stress and struggle of life. The time will come, however, when the conscious formation of character will form an important part in the education of youth, and when no man will be able to fill the position of preacher unless he be a man of habitual self-control, unblemished integrity, and exalted purity, so as to be able to give sound instruction in the making of character, which will then be the main feature of religion. The doctrine herein set forth by the author is the doctrine of conquest over evil, the annihilation of sin, and necessarily the permanent establishment of man in the knowledge of good, and in the enjoyment of perpetual peace. This is the teaching of the masters of all religions in all ages. Howsoever it may have been disguised and distorted by the unenlightened, it is the doctrine of all the perfect ones that were, and will be the doctrine of all the perfect ones that are to come. It is the doctrine of truth, and the conquest is not of an evil without, not of evil men, or evil spirits, or evil things, but of the evil within, of evil thoughts, evil desires, evil deeds. For when every man has destroyed the evil within his own heart, to where in the whole vast universe will any one be able to point and say, there is evil? In that great day, when all men have become good within, all traces of evil will have vanished from the earth, sin and sorrow will be unknown, and there will be universal joy for evermore. End of chapter 7. Recording by Andrea Fiore. www.andreafiore.name. End of Man, King of Mind, Body, and Circumstance by James Allen.